Anniversaries come and go, but this one felt different. It wasn't just another date on calendar. It marked the first year since I discovered my marriage was over. I know what you're thinking. Who would commemorate such a thing? But it wasn't about celebrating the pain. It was about acknowledging that I had survived it. I had come out on the other side. Stronger. A year ago today, I sat in my office, my mind racing with disbelief. This isn't what I signed up for, is it? I remembered the vows, for better or worse, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. Death, I mused, was beginning to sound like an escape plan. That was my mindset when I learned the truth. The woman I had loved for 6 years, my best friend, my everything, had been unfaithful. You're probably assuming there were warning signs. Late nights, sudden showers upon getting home, a dwindling interest in intimacy, constant irritation at the smallest things. But no, there were none of those. I wasn't suspicious. I was just a fool. So how did I find out? It was a Wednesday, just before lunch. I had made an impromptu visit to a client and was heading back to the office when I decided to grab a fried fish sandwich from a place I knew well. They called it the Whale, crispy, golden battered fish tucked into a fresh roll with tartar sauce, lettuce, and tomato. You know that feeling when life is going smoothly, work is steady, customers are happy, and you're just looking forward to a simple pleasure? That was me. Content. Oblivious. Then it happened. Stopped at a red light. I noticed my wife's car driving in the opposite direction. I watched as she turned into the parking lot of the seedy little motel. The kind where people go when they don't want to be seen. My stomach twisted. What the hell? Instinctively, I pulled into the gas station across the street, parking where I had a clear view. I watched as she stepped out her car, walked with practiced ease to one of the rooms, knocked, and disappeared inside without hesitation. It was like second nature to her. Now, you might assume I lost control, that I stormed across the street, pounded on the door, and confronted them in a jealous rage. Or maybe you think I sneaked around to a window, peering in like a heartbroken investigator, watching the betrayal unfold with my own eyes. But I did none of that. I needed to know, but more importantly, I needed her not to know that I knew. So I waited. An hour later, she emerged. 5 minutes after that, a man followed, a polished figure in an expensive suit. He slid into his Lexus and drove off. Typical. I had always thought Lexuses were overpriced toys for people desperate to prove something. The rest of my day was a blur. I didn't even pretend to work. I just sat in my office, scrolling through divorce laws. It was just as I'd always heard. Whether the split was mutual due to infidelity or anything in between, the outcome was the same. She'd still walk away with a piece of what I had built. Damn her. But then a thought hit me. I didn't even know who he was. If I wanted him to pay, I needed his name. Fate intervened that night. She must have sensed my mood because she kept asking what was wrong. Was she feeling guilty? Nervous? Did she think I had caught on? Or was she so tangled in her own web that she hadn't even connected my silence to her actions? I distracted myself with the evening news. A local bank had been robbed earlier that day, and surveillance footage showed a masked figure fleeing the scene. The person wore a COVID mask, making their face nearly impossible to identify. But their height, build, hair, and even the shape of their eyes bore an eerie resemblance to my wife. Of course, I knew it wasn't her. She had spent that afternoon in a motel room, tangled up with some guy in a Lexus. But I could play dumb. Hell, maybe I wasn't even playing. The next morning, I called the police station. I asked about the robbery, feigning curiosity. The officer on the phone told me they were following some leads, which, in cop language, meant they had nothing. So I decided to help. With a voice full of fake concern, I casually mentioned that the suspect looked a lot like the woman who lived across the street from me. Then, ever so helpfully, I gave them her name. I also mentioned to police that she had recently gotten a new car. Only half a lie, since I was the one who actually bought it. And I made sure to casually point out that she wasn't home when the robbery happened. That part, at least, was entirely true. My expectation? That the cops would knock on her door, ask a few awkward questions, and leave her rattled. I figured I'd get a good laugh out of it to lighten the coming weeks as I prepared to file for divorce. But things turned out even better than I imagined. When the officers realized that she really did bear a striking resemblance to the suspect, and that she couldn't provide a solid alibi, they took her to the station for what they politely called an interview. There, she had no choice but to confess where she had been and with whom. Anyone listening could easily piece together what she had been doing. While she sat at the station, they went to verify her story. That's a polite way of saying they locked her in a cell and paid a visit to her lover's house. When he wasn't home, his wife, unaware of what was coming, gave them his work address. Naturally, her curiosity was piqued as to why the police were so interested in her husband. When they confronted him, he initially denied everything. So they took a short trip to the motel, pulled the security footage, and there he was, caught in crystal clear detail. The officers weren't exactly thrilled by his presence on the tapes, but at least it proved he wasn't the bank robber. Unfortunately for him, lying to law enforcement is still a crime. That night, they returned to his house, this time to charge him with a minor offense. And I have a sneaking suspicion they waited until he got home on purpose, just so they could slap the cuffs on him in front of his wife. It didn't lead to a hefty fine or jail time, but it did lead to his divorce. The story was too juicy to stay quiet. The incident quickly became an inside joke among the police, who shared it with their friends. Their friends told more friends. Soon enough, my wife and her lover became the town's favorite punchline. Even the judge presiding over my divorce case cracked a smile when he realized who she was. In the end, the divorce went through without a hitch. She played her role, said all the expected lines, but the confidence she once carried had been shattered, and there was no putting it back together. Everywhere she went, she was met with whispers, quiet laughter, and knowing smirks. Eventually, she left town. I have no idea where she is now, or if she's still with him. And honestly, I don't care. Looking back, I sometimes wonder if it was worth all the effort. I knew she was cheating, and I was more than ready to divorce her for it. But a part of me wanted her to experience the humiliation of having to admit to cheating just to clear her name of something worse. I could picture it, her sitting there, forced to say, yes, I'm a liar and a cheater, but I'm not a bank robber. Was it as satisfying as I had hoped? Maybe not, but would I do it again? Without question. Eventually, 2 officers showed up at my door. By then, anonymity was out of the question. They knew exactly who had tipped them off. Officially, they acted neutral. Unofficially, I offered to buy them each a beer, and we all agreed to consider a small fine. One of them was already divorced. The other was on the verge of it. They both respected my handiwork. Just don't do it again, one of them told me. I wasn't sure if he meant the false tip-off or marrying her in the first place. Either way, I agreed. And now, a year later, I've left the lies behind and am piecing my life back together. A few so-called friends who had known about my wife's affair and kept quiet were easy to cut off. Instead, I focused on the people who had stood by me. I didn't start dating again until the divorce was finalized. I spent that time working through my emotions, making peace with the past. Then, about a month ago, I met someone, a remarkable woman my age, who also had a cheating ex-husband in her rearview mirror. We clicked instantly. She, too, was rebuilding her life. And she, too, had made it her personal mission to discover the finest bourbon on the planet. We consider it a sacred quest, one we take very seriously. Maybe we'll find it. Maybe we won't. But right now, we're taking our time, enjoying every moment. And tonight, she'll be by my side, helping me celebrate my divorce.